Yeah, so welcome. My name's Andy Drake, if you don't know who I am. And I'm based in Leeds and manage the Talent Hub program, which is getting a big launch week after next. And yeah, so we're going to talk about, this is part 1 of 3 on planning junior to senior transition in racewalk athletes. Yeah, thank you, some of you coaches that asked for this topic, and the next one in a few weeks' time, sort of like looking at how you kind of periodize the year and plan things. Again, that was a request, so we're going to cover those for starters for the first few weeks. Broken this down into 3 parts, so we're going to kind of look at like models of athlete development this morning with a few slides. Next week, then we're going to get into I guess sort of looking at training loads for young athletes and how we sort of manage some of that. And then the third part is actually sort of like, we call it Talent ID, but looking at sort of, the programs and things that we use to support athletes as they're progressing through. So cool. So we got a little bit of a slideshow to look at and have a chat through, and then that I'm sure there'll be plenty of time for question and answer. Yeah, so if you've got some questions that come up, yeah, get them into the in the chat down below here, and Helen will get those organised once we've been and had a look at the slides. So cool. If you've looked at 1 or 2 of the other webinars that we've done that have linked into to Racewalk events, then yeah, you'll have seen this slide. So in essence, I think as coaches, we're working somewhere in between these 2 athletes here. Yeah, and managing that and organising that, yeah, it's a big challenge, and yeah, and hence having a look at that in a bit of detail in these sessions. So yeah, I think we're all working at some point in between there. Yeah, so how do we get to compete in the in the World Championships, or in essence just get through to enjoying senior level competition? And this this is our challenge here in front of us. So what I've got on the screen is, these are the all-time lists from Power of 10 for the 10K or the 10,000 meter race walk for men and women for the under 20 age group. So we've got the performance, we've got the personal best, and where there's a little PB highlighted by the athlete's name, in essence, that is their PB. That athlete didn't get any faster as a senior athlete. In most of those cases, they probably didn't progress into being a senior athlete. So yeah, it's probably just under half of them that get through to senior level. Hey, there's a couple of anomalies in there. Some people don't have probably then only got on to race like 10,000 on the track rather than 10K on the road, because they've probably then been getting into doing like the Olympic distance stuff. So but as a trend, we can see that challenge. And actually, we pulled up the all-time list for any of the track and field events. We see a similar sort of thing. So the junior senior transition is it's a big challenge for every sport. It's a big challenge for us in athletics. And in a race walk event group where you've got small numbers, like all of the technical events, where we lose an athlete, then it creates a big hole. So yeah, hence it's like a perennial focus for us. Cool. So if we look at the challenge that we have, then again, it's unique in athletics in terms of the way that we load athletes up, because you start at under 13 racing 2K. So if we go up in our age groups, then you move to racing 3 to 5, doubles up to racing 10K, 10,000 meters as an under 20 athlete in all your championship distances, and then we go into Olympic distances. So hurdle barrier heights do change in in those events. You know, some of the throws, the implements, yeah, they change as well, but not in the magnitudes that we have in our event group. Hey, of course, there are plenty of opportunities to race shorter distances, and but yeah, that's the big challenge. We've got race volumes that are going up, and of course, if you want to be really competitive and really successful at those, you're probably also trying to get your race pace down at the same time as pushing the volume up. So yeah, that's quite a pickle then for people to work out. Yeah, how do we load up athletes? So anyway, that's next week we get into some of that. But yeah, if I think yeah, we're many racewalk athletes and coaches in here this morning, so you're very familiar with that challenge. Right, so let's have a little look at how we sort of fit this into like the model of sort of progression for athletes in terms of like kind of career stages. So there's numerous models of athlete development. So Istvan Barley's long-term athlete development model, is probably one that's really well known. And it has a big focus on sort of physiological growth and maturation progression. And whilst that is that's really important, and it informs like the British Athletics athlete development model that sort of sits in all of the coach ed stuff as well. But in essence, in terms of what we're doing as coaches, whilst we want to understand a lot of that, we're getting people involved in our events, so they're trying it out alongside probably lots of other events, other sports. At some point, then they kind of say, right, this is the event for me, so I'm going to get into being a race walker. So that's we call that specializing. And then they're kind of making some big choices and commitments and really kind of investing their time and effort into what they're doing. And at some point there, we hopefully will get the best out of them, whatever that may be. If they're happy with that kind of level, hopefully they're sort of hang in there and race at a high level, and continue enjoying that. And then at some point, then we stop. So I like that as Joe Baker, who put that model together, is a real expert in the perils and pitfalls of sort of talent ID and talent development. Yeah, I use that model an awful lot. Another one that I find really useful, is Weineman, Afferman, Lavallee. These guys, we'll see. We're going to build up their model. So they've got kind of similar stages. They've used different terms, but in essence, it's the same kind of thing. Initiation, development through to sort of mastering what we're doing, and then at some point we're stopping. If we kind of put the two together, then we can see that they're talking about same sorts of things, really. But what this model does, I think this sort of flags up. This is really where we're working then, I think, as coaches. So we've at the same time, so we're initiating, we're sampling. This is the stuff that we'll do with children, and then as they then developing and trying to sort of get that investment together, the specialization and then the investment, then that's probably all happening at the same time that they're going through adolescence. That takes us back to that long-term athlete development model, which focuses on things like peak height velocity and all of the maturation that goes with that. So we can see that with this sits with then you've got who's important in the life of the athlete. So we have this psychosocial level. So as children, then parents are top of the list. you know, any brothers and sisters, and then, you know, and then friends. You know, as we move through into adolescence, yeah, you know, mum and dad drop down the list to number 3, and they're clearly in the relegation zone, hanging in there. You know, peers become important, and coaches appear on the scene. You know, and then as we continue through, then yeah, you know, we sort of develop, you know, likely to have then like long-term relationships and partners, and they become, you know, important, and then that might well develop into a family unit later on. So you know, we're managing you know, athletics coaching and all of those challenges, you know, within all of that sort of psychosocial development. And then at the bottom there's the challenges of the education system, and going through and, you know, and getting a job. So yeah, that what I like, the Joe Baker's simple model summarizes, you know, all of those things. I guess today we get an opportunity to sort of look at it a little bit deeper. Yeah, so as coaches, you know, we're kind of helping people negotiate all of that, and at the same time, you know, trying to build sort of all of our athletic challenges and opportunities on top of that. And of course, if we highlight, you know, mid to late teens through to early 20s, you know, that's our you know, our junior athlete cohort. So not only are they like upping the distances that they've, you know, that they're training and racing for in this event group, yeah, you can see here as a bit of a perfect storm, you know, of like going through adolescence, you know, changing relationships, you know, and a big one, you know, completing secondary education and you know, either going into higher education or, you know, into some kind of vocation and employment after that. So these are like, you know, enormous kind of life changes, and at the same time we're yeah, we're looking for people to make yeah, you know, those choices about investing as an athlete. So yeah, if we can get people through that, then you know, we're far more likely to hang on to them. So yeah, I think, you know, I think we're kind of all familiar with that, and this is some nice evidence to support that. Some of the work that I looked at when putting some of this together was by my close colleague, who's best known as a biomechanist, Brian Hanley. But Brian's also done a lot of work on actually sort of looking at athlete progression and things like this. And yeah, there's some nice sort of data that shows that yeah, athletes who compete in the European under-23 championships are far more likely to go on and continue and be successful as in sort of senior championships, compared to athletes that compete in, say, the European under-20 championships, yeah, or some of the younger age group championships. But I guess it's probably no surprise, if you've made the under-23 team, then you've made some big investments. You've also probably got through that that critical stage there. So yeah, it's probably no surprise that yeah, athletes who make those under-23 teams perhaps have, you know, better likelihood of progression than some of the younger age group teams and opportunities. But hey, we're not working with, you know, a lot of the athletes that we work with, you know, they're just trying to find out how good they can be. It's not all about international teams. So yeah, I guess it's just helping, just working out how we can get through all of that. Right. I've just got a couple of other slides to have a look at, and then we can sort of get into having a chat about some of this. This is some fairly recent work that they published. It's actually looking at team sport athletes and rugby, but it's looking at, you know, why don't people with some obvious, you know, people we might say are gifted, talented in sport, how come they didn't make it? And Dave Collins Professor Collins, yeah, he's previously been the performance director for British Athletics. So he's he's worked in high level sport. And that nicely backs up sort of all of his academic credentials. But in essence, they found 5 reasons why people didn't make it through. Yeah, there was a lack of mental skills. I've highlighted them there. Lack of mental skills, serendipity, pathway-based failures, maladaptive family input, and a lack of physical skills. So serendipity, I guess that sort of, that's sort of like things. Well, sometimes you have a real sort of, it would appear that you have kind of like quite a glut of talent, and you have a number of people fighting out for opportunities within a particular age group. If you think back to 4 years ago at World Team Championships, then our junior men's team was really strong. They got 4th place. Callum Wilkinson, Cameron Corbishley, and Guy Thomas. So, Guy, as a junior athlete walking 43 minutes odd, be very excited to have an athlete walking 43. Okay, but probably not getting much of a look in when you consider that, you've got Cameron in front of him, and then in front of Cameron, you'd get excited about what he was doing at that time. Then you've got Callum, and he went on to win World Junior Championships that summer. So sometimes that would be a sort of a serendipitous reason that just sort of flags up why, where I guess that was more about giving people kind of having lots of attention. Basically you had 3 at the same time who were operating at a really high level. So pathway-based failures, I mean, hey, that's I guess that's what we're looking at and reflecting on all the time in the work that we do with how we organize sort of programs and opportunities and the like. So that's that comes into, I guess, sort of my area and colleagues. Maladaptive family input. That's I guess that can people are too interested, not interested enough. But I guess as coaches, it's good. We want strong relationships, and I guess we want we want to. I guess hopefully, if our philosophies are aligned, that makes for a more of a successful outcome. So that's that's a factor there. I know you've got sort of sandwiching all of that. You've got lack of mental skills and lack of physical skills, and I guess that's then if you coaches and athletes, if you've been involved in any of the programs that we've organized, well, I guess for many years now, then there's usually a focus. We're never very far away from introducing the ideas for help athletes develop their physical skills, and and also look at supporting them with developing mental skills as well. So there's a couple of images there from a training camp we ran in February this year, and so some basic S&C type work with that's part of like a ramp warm up, which we covered in a webinar the other week, something similar to that. And we ran a workshop on we're actually looking at perfectionism and helping athletes develop confidence. So we're never very far away from those factors there, in terms of supporting athletes. Just coming back to that bit of research there. So we've got in the middle there, we've got the pathway, challenges in the pathway itself. So I guess where we tend to try and address that is looking at mental skills and physical skills within that. The serendipitous stuff, hey, that's something that we just have to deal with and manage. And I guess that as coaches, then how do we communicate yeah, if we suddenly have got a super talented group of performers, yeah, on another year you might well have been like highly ranked and highly praised, and now you're you're not getting some of that yet. Actually, your performance level is really good. So thinking about long-term investments for athletes, so yeah, that's something for us to reflect on in terms of like communicating in there. Yeah, and then we want to build those relationships with and have like some shared values and shared philosophies with families as well, because they are kind of critical to to athletes developing and progressing through. All right. Cool. We're just going to see if we can switch on the question and answer mode, which doesn't want to play. That's been plaguing us a little bit this week. So, right. If you've got some questions, then we'll try and pick them out through the chat function. So I'll leave you to have a look at some of those. So yeah, so I guess that's that's in terms of the little slideshow there. That's some of my thoughts on I guess where we base a lot of our our thinking and our programming with the athletes from. So this goes on the Athletics Hub to have a look at. They're all going up in about a week's time after each event, so you can check that on the schedule in terms of watching that again and having a look at the slides again. So yeah, right. Yeah, if you've got any questions, type them in. We'll see. Yeah, that should work. We'll use the chat function. So if you want to talk about anything about like athlete development and what we've just had a look at, or just general event specific racewalk stuff, then yeah, then drop us a question in there. Cool. I can see people are typing. That's great. Yeah. And just whilst we're waiting for that, so the stuff that's coming up in a few weeks' time. So we've got 3 weeks looking at this. We're going to look at training loads next week. So I know there's a lot of interest in that. Yeah, talent ID. I guess that kind of gets into like, yeah, how we sort of link into some of the programs that are on offer, and then how we use that to impact on all of our athletes, so they can all find out how good they can be. When we get to June, we've got a couple of weeks on organising training and tapering. So again, that was a request from a couple of coaches. So thank you for that. A couple of weeks on physiology, sort of understanding and then predicting performance. We are a technical event, so then we'll kind of try and link that together with biomechanics. Then some ideas on how we go about as a coach analysing technique and making decisions from that. And there's a couple of weeks looking at 50-kilometer nutrition. So yeah, and we'll be bringing our nutritionist Cara back in for those. She did a nice session for us last week. So right, a couple of questions in there. Should be able to see the chat box. Should be on the bottom right of your screen. So right, it's definitely a gremlin in the system. It's at this end, not your end, and it's plagued a few people this week. So I can see Claire is typing. Let's see what we got. pressure's on. People are typing, they get their question on. They now know that we're watching and feeling hugely pressurized into. Nice one, right, Sylvia? We've got a question. What would be an ideal pathway to developing technique? Cool, that's a good question. In 2 weeks' time, we'll have a little bit of a look at that, and then it comes up in a few weeks in a little bit of detail as well. But if you watched, we had a webinar on developing technique. Probably one of the early weeks when we started doing these, which is up online. That talks about like how do we get into the event. So just like introducing some basic walks drills, so you can kind of get somebody going. They would have a basic technique and actually could do a competition. Probably pretty clunky, and would then we would want them to get into actually properly coaching that athlete and smooth a lot of things out. But hey, we're a technical event, so we want to give athletes something that will let them, take part, do a competition, and then the refinements that come with that. I guess typical of of junior athletes, a lot of when we just talked about developing physical skills there. So I guess we get to a point at some point we'll I guess this comes up in the next couple of weeks as well in some way. I guess coming to the club Tuesday, Thursday, and doing a race at the weekend, with those sort of basic techniques gets us so far, and with that probably it probably goes hand in hand with the points when you're thinking, right, this is sort of specialization time or investment time. And that's probably then when we start, we'd be looking at, elements of like strength and conditioning, and I guess, we might then start to think about, maybe sort of like analyzing technique in a real sort of simple way. So we've got some ideas about that coming up in a few weeks. But certainly S&C would be is something that goes hand in hand with technical development. So, drills and skills, conditioning, and of course all of our endurance training. Marrying that up with each individual athlete, of course, is our challenge as a coach. The essence is just to dwell on that point for one moment. We're looking at some sort of basic technique stuff the other week. Strength around the ankles is kind of really, really critical. So that's something that we certainly start to develop in junior athletes, so that they can start to develop technique, and roll their feet rather than sort of slapping their feet down. So right. But thanks, Sylvia, for that one. Right, question from Claire. So if peers are so important to athlete development at this critical stage, I'd guess that being with a group of similar peers might be more motivating. Race walking tends to be very niche. There's few practically no opportunities to try sport. What can England Athletics do to maybe get race walking into athletics leagues? Cool. Well, I agree with you, Claire. It's a key point. Where we have some league competition that includes race walking, then we've got some healthy athlete groups. So it's a bit of a no-brainer that you create some of those opportunities. I think developing where we have coaches, we have athletes as well. So I know that you're developing your coaching, which is fantastic. But yeah, league competition is it's a real moot point where we've got those opportunities, southeast of England and in Wales. Then, we certainly have athletes. We have a youth development league that has included race walking in its final, but not in its regular league. But it has taken that out, and frankly for no good reason. So, I guess our big challenge there is that so I guess what do England Athletics do in terms of developing race walking? Well, we're one of the targeted events along with steeplechase, marathon and 400-meter hurdles, and so we create those opportunities. When we look at some of our sort of talent ID stuff that comes up in a couple of weeks' time, you can see there's real value in having a focus on the event to do just that, to create opportunities to get people together, increasingly training as the groups develop. So I've been really enthused about that in the last couple of years, and especially through this winter. I think we really felt that a lot of the activities we put on we'd made a bit of a leap, and we've got a group of people that are training together, perhaps rather than coming for sort of development and introductory type activities, and that is driven by a group of really hardworking coaches who are switched on and are building some really good training groups. So I think if I was in a position within one of the sports governing bodies, and looking at things like professional standards and the like, then I would ensure that league competition included race walking, and that opportunity at all levels. I guess the people that run and organise the leagues, they're largely, this is largely done on volunteer effort. And they make those choices about what events get included. So a good chat, Claire. Right. Cool. See, there's a couple of people popping in some questions on here or some comments, so that's good. Just going back to the league point as well. Race walks in a lot of the Masters leagues, so they absolutely love it. 2K races all over the place. Cool. Great question from Graham. Thanks. Would you include a need to assess young athletes' basic movement skills and basic functional competencies as developed by 365? Yes. Some athletes come to race walking having come through athletics clubs where attention has already been paid to this, but my experience is some do not, and this is something race walk coach needs to attend to. So, I think that's a really good, point, Graham. We're athletes, and then we compete in a race walk event, rather than race walk being its own little sport. So we're track and field athletes, number one. And I think it's our responsibility as coaches that we develop those, and help athletes develop those competencies. As young athletes, when you're kind of making those choices about you're going to invest in this and specialize, then some of this stuff gets addressed in school physical education, but that will be varied. So some athletes will kind of get that catered for through school PE, others perhaps not, or other sports that they're involved with may they may come with some good skills from from one sport where it is developed, or perhaps they've done something else and do something else where it it isn't addressed. So we want a good understanding of what else they're up to. Yeah, certainly, I guess that just sort of sharing my experience and with our program, in Leeds. So we've taken a number of athletes, kind of transferred them into the Racewalk group from other events. So, and they've had those good athletic skills, and then we've built technique on top of that. They've had good athletic skills and really good training habits. And then often the Racewalk athletes that have come in, then we've had to focus on a lot more on some of that athleticism. That's probably a reflection on a number of years of experience. Just to qualify that, I think that athletes, so our current sort of junior athletes and the athletes that we're working with on our targeted event program, from lots of the training camps and activities we've run kind of through the last winter, are increasingly athletic. So we're no longer like putting on, this is an introduction to the idea of doing strength and conditioning training, but we're actually, the athletes are coming ready, and we're actually, when we meet up, we're actually training and doing an S&C session. So yeah, there's increasingly our Racewalk athletes are better athletes than say 10, 15 years ago. So that's a good thing, but it still remains that we want to address those kind of their core competencies. So brilliant, thanks for that. Cool. All right. Yeah, thanks, Graham. So nice one. Right. Hey, there are. Oh, Helen's dropping a line in there, but I would imagine that I think we're kind of wrapped up for questions there. So I think we'll probably we'll wrap things up in a moment. So just to say, we're looking at this in terms of like training loads and some examples from around the world next week for working with young athletes and getting them up to speed to to progress through the distances and the challenges. If you've got ideas for topics that you'd like us to cover in a webinar, just drop me a line and let me know, and can have a look and see if we can put those into the program. I'm really happy to do that. But cool. But otherwise, so thanks for tuning in this morning. It'll be online again in a week's time. That's quite a few people at work and that, and who will be looking out for that, and share it with some of the athletes that you're working with as well if they're interested. So we'll see you back here at the same time next week. Stay safe. Hope everyone's okay. And thanks for checking in with us this morning. All right.